What's up, y'all? Long time no stream. I'm around others a lot. Can't really stream too much. I don't even get to watch the streamers I like, like Big Papa Fascist shit talks. But anyway, I have been paying attention to this academic agent meltdown about. It's a personal grudge, but the topic was about Jewish power and some interesting discussions around that are actually pretty dumb. But this academic agent guy, he at least conducts himself in a conversational way, at least through conversation, but he has gotten a little spurgy lately with this stuff, and he's hung up on Jewish power, which he mentions manifests itself in several ways, from mandatory Holocaust education to NGOs to support for the state of Israel, which I've talked about before, which could be interpreted as Jewish activism, but I also maintain certainly much of this is other Americans, non-Jewish Christians, that almost like a form of virtue signaling for the state of Israel. The state of Israel is like their paragon of virtue in a sea of barbarism in the Middle East. So this has its own dynamic, but certainly I would characterize that a Jewish issue with some power dynamics. What else does he say? He didn't say the kosher food thing, but you could say that. What else? Holocaust museums, I think I said that. And then just kind of these esoteric examples, like Biden went to some event that tries to prevent abortions in the state of Israel, and he's certainly strongly pro-choice here. But now he wasn't trying to outlaw abortion in Israel. So, okay, it's a different stance, but it's not 180 degrees different. He's still pro-choice, at least having the option in Israel. But anyway, these are some of these examples, which, I don't know, none of them are that strong in my book. But it got me to thinking, okay, these are the examples of so-called Jewish power that they stand out, right? Like, the kosher designation was adopted for food designation because it's a high level of cleanliness, and people like that. They adopted it. They started using it, so various food companies adopted it. I don't know the full story, but it got me to thinking. These people are looking at particular power so-called exercised by certain groups or certain people, and ignoring power. I would call it default power. The power exercised by the usual people, white Europeans, Christians, that we don't think of as power because it's just exists. It's a part of our society. It's always been there. Like, for example, I'm speaking English right now, which came from white Europeans. Much of the world speaks English. But apparently these people don't think of that as power or domination, because it's like, well, to them, the Europeans had the good graces of making this language and sharing it with the world. Now, I don't know. If all those people, instead of speaking English, they spoke Hebrew or Yiddish, I bet they would be saying, see, this is an example of Jewish power exerting their language on us. But they don't do that for English. But when it's dietary regulations, that's an exertion of Jewish power. When there's museums of a certain historical event, that's considered an exertion of Jewish power and potentially threatening. But when they have these buildings commemorating the death. So they don't like these museums representing an event that happened 80 years ago. That's an exertion of power that they see as potentially problematic. But they're not threatened by the 380,000 buildings in every single town across the country that commemorate the death of one Jewish man who lived 2,000 years ago. Because that's just normal default power. Something you don't think about. But obviously the church is an immensely powerful institution. We swear on the Bible. We say one nation under God. That was at least started out as the Christian God. We don't think of this power because it's default power. It's kind of like all around you, and you don't think about it, at least to these people. I mean, I don't even think about it, right? I don't speak English and be like, oh my God, this is a white European power structure that implemented this language. No, it seems kind of ridiculous. It's just kind of the world we live in. So, I guess the point is they're placing, 100, 1,000 times the emphasis on what can be construed as Jewish power and totally ignoring the power that they consider to be normative and normal, the default power. So, is there Jewish power? I mean, certainly there is to a certain degree. Every group exerts power to a certain degree. But another part of this paradox, which I'm not even sure there's really a paradox, I just like using the word. Another part of the paradox is when you, let's just say, attack another group, what do they do in response? Well, the natural response is to respond to that through the building of influence, through the building of power. So that happened, say, with the establishment of the State of Israel. The Holocaust was the biggest representation of powerless that could possibly exist, right? 2/3 of your people being exterminated in Europe, and most of the world doesn't do a damn thing, doesn't care. So here these people are saying, like, oh, these people have so much power, this is problematic. And I'm not denying that during that period of the Holocaust, there were Jews with disproportionate power, with a lot of power in New York and, cities around the world. But on the whole, were they powerful compared to the forces against them? Well, obviously not, if they killed 2/3 of the European Jewish population, 1/3 of the world. This is, like, by anyone's definition, not powerful or weak. And I think this is part of why they deny it. Because it's literally the best example of powerlessness you could possibly have. So how do you respond to powerlessness that threatens your very existence? Well, you build your power, of course, through the establishment of the State of Israel, through institutions, through organizing. And certainly this happened. Now, is this a threatening amount of power that's threatening to the people pointing this power out? I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. But these people are certainly exaggerating and overemphasizing the power wielded in this manner, and they're totally ignoring the power that they have. I mean, if you think about just all the ways in which European white normative structures exist in ways we don't even realize, I guess I wouldn't notice because, I'm white, so I wouldn't know what it's like to be non-white amongst a bunch of white people. I mean, I guess I would know what it's like to be Jewish around a bunch of Christians or a bunch of white people, or around a bunch of white Christians, but I'm pretty much a part of the white population, so I don't stick out like a sore thumb. So, but what I'm saying is, this is where the real power exists. European power, which dominated the world in a way it's never been dominated for 500 years, and only now are the people that were stepped on by that power structure, abused by that power structure, only now, kind of in the last couple decades or 50 years or something like this, exerting their power and influence. So gays are coming out of the closet. It's now gay month, Pride month, June. Jews have their Holocaust museums. I mean, every group that's not white Christians is doing this to some degree, is exerting power. So to be threatened by this power is not looking at the power structures equally. So that's my main point. To not be talking about these power structures, but being threatened by kosher dietary certification. This isn't looking at the world objectively. And there are various groups that are strong in some ways and that are weak in other ways. You know, like, say Jews and Asians are overrepresented in high achieving ways, both income and education, but are also on the short end of the stick in other ways, you know, like being seen as normative part of society in the United States or other places. Anyway, Academic Agent had this hilarious stream where he melted down over this guy who I didn't even know, PSA Sitch, because they were having this conversation. So that wasn't necessarily, but they were talking about the subjects. That's kind of why it's related. But it was really funny and hilarious. And I wish they had the ability to go through that stream and clip some of the funnier clips, the meltdowns and everything. But the paradox of Jewish power is the more you oppose Jewish power, I think the stronger you make Jews. But what was the other point I was going to make? Yeah, so they like to do this thing where they point out one of the other ways he said Jewish power is manifested is through censorship. You know, like, we can't talk about Jewish power because as soon as we mention it, we get attacked by the Jewish power structure. So this is another paradox, I think, because you say X group is powerful, and then you go out there and insult them and attack them and denigrate them, and then they respond, and then you say, oh, we're being attacked by the power structure. This is a paradox, because if you attack any people strongly enough, strenuously enough, eventually they're going to respond if they think it's having a negative impact and it's pissing them off, and they're going to exert some type of influence or some type of power. Now, plenty of people talk about Jewish power in often complimentary ways, but also, I don't know, a neutral way, or just pointing it out. Like the Israel lobby has a lot of power, and that's not gonna, nothing real negative is gonna come from that. But more extreme things, like, I don't know, talking about the Holocaust industry, or say revisionism or Holocaust denial, that can have some negative repercussions. And, well, why does this exist? Because of the negative implications and results that have happened from people that have exaggerated, say, conspiracy theories and the like. So they kind of build this paradox where it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy or self-victimization thing where they harp on the Jews and attack them, be like, see, they have too much power, that's why I'm being attacked. But I think that can happen with many different groups. What else was I going to mention? Blacks, gays, Native Americans. What about the Native Americans? They have their own wing of the government, the Native American Affairs Bureau. I mean, there's no white bureau. Isn't that an unacceptable level of power and influence? Why do the Native Americans have such power? There's no nuance with this thought process. Like, groups will advocate for something to make up for their weaknesses in the past, like the state of Israel, like the state of Armenia, like Indian reservations, like, I don't know, reparations even. You can't just look at them in isolation. There's a reason why they exist. You know what I mean? What else did I want to say on this? Yeah, the censorship exists because of the extreme incitement that happens in some of these places. Like, uh, it goes from Holocaust denial to saying Hitler was right. Uh, um, these people have a negative influence on our society, and we're justified in getting rid of them. This type of, almost quasi genocidal type of language. And so it's not surprising that the people that you're talking about come to deplatform or censor, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, who else would do it? The people that you're attacking. So this is the type of circular reasoning paradox that exists with these people that are obsessed with so-called Jewish power. So not as powerful as European civilization, that's for sure, on total. So until it gets to that level, maybe they should be more realistic about it. Anyway, whatever. I'm done with this video. Everyone have a good day.